Couple of late arrivals. Evening, everyone. If you're already in and can see and hear me, you'll have been muted on entry just to stop the cameras jumping around too much. But pretty much everyone is on time. So well done, everyone, for changing from one Zoom meeting onto a much more interesting Zoom meeting. The Museum Wine's Fine Wine Extravaganza. So as you'll know from the, sorry if I get distracted, I'm just still letting people in. So as you'll know from the email and the product you've bought, if you wanted to buy one of each bottles of what we're going to be trying this evening, that would cost you no less than £550. So I think having the opportunity to try these wines for £75 to get 68 ml samples of each is amazing, amazing opportunity. One of the silver linings to have come out of COVID is these opportunities, these ways people have pivoted and started doing things a little bit differently. So some of you may not have ever had a wine that costs over £100 a bottle. Tonight you're going to have two, which is the minimum you need on a sunny Thursday. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be giving host duties to 3 winemakers and 1 winery owner. So Rutger is going to introduce his wine, the Field Blend, in about 2 minutes, because I'm being very strict with timings. And because we are being strict, we've got to do 8 wines in an hour. So it's about 7 minutes per wine we've allocated. So whilst you are all able to unmute yourselves and get involved, don't do that just yet. We've got a pro account, so we're not going to get kicked off after 40 minutes. We can go over the hour if we need to at the end for a Q&A. If there's anything you'd like to ask whilst the winemakers are speaking, just tap that into the chat box. Then once they finish speaking at the end of their allotted time, they can answer that in the chat box. Then at the end, once we've tried all the wines, if there's anyone that would like to hang on for a little bit longer, you're more than welcome. The only pressing thing that's happening after the tasting is the Blind Faith Season 2 live reveal at 8 o'clock, which are, looking at the names on the participants, there's a fair few of you who will also need to be logging onto that, as I will, at 8 o'clock to find out what Robbie has given us this week, which I'm quite interested to know, to be honest. So here I'm going to hand over straight to Rutger. We're 6:03. Rutger from Startconde in the Jonkershoek appellation of Stellenbosch. Over to you.
All right. Good evening, guys. My name is Rutger van Wyk. I'm from Startconde Wines. I'm on a tight time schedule, like Daniel said here, so I'll crash everything into 7 minutes. So firstly, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain my wine tonight. I was actually on a dish duty doing the dishes tonight, so thank you for luring me into a tasting. That I appreciate that a lot. So first thing, just a little bit of background on Startconde. I think it's quite important to say that Startconde is one of the first farms that was actually slave owned. So I found that quite interesting in South Africa. There's some beautiful history that comes on the estate. And that just comes back full circle for myself, being from a different ethnical group. Startconde is under ownership from 1998 from the Schroeders. The new things happening on Startconde is that we going into our 3rd year as organically certified producer through EcoCert. So that's really interesting. Heading on to the wine. First thing, the wine that we were tasting here is the Field Blend 2019. So something interesting about this is it is a 2-hectare block, and it is planted on 11 different soil types. So you can already imagine it's a really complex block to farm, and just farming one varietal would also make it really complicated. So the idea of this wine was actually just to plant different varietals that suits each different soil type. So in general, the block is planted to 4 different varietals, Chenin Blanc, Roussanne, Viognier, and Verdelho. And in the traditional field blend way from the Madeiran Islands in Portugal is we pick all the varietals at once, treated as one juice. So literally the grapes go in, it gets pressed, and we co-ferment everything. And yeah, it goes into about 90% oak, of which 3% is new oak and 10% is cement eggs. So we keep things really complex here. And this year, actually, I've started to work with a bit of amphora. So yeah, I like playing around in the cellar with new techniques and new fermentations. And yeah, I think the more complexity in this wine, the better it makes. So this is our flagship for Starkonde, our white flagship. And it is a really good food wine. I think it pairs well with spicy food. Yeah, any curry dishes or Cape Malay, or it can even go really well with, you know, any seafood, sea tuna, etc., etc. So Daniel, I don't know if I was too quick with that one, but I can elaborate a bit more. But yeah,
You've got 5 minutes. Keep going. If you, I mean, I don't know if this is going to pick me up now that I've taken off the host, but yeah, if you want to finish early, you're more than welcome. You don't have to use up the full 7 minutes, but yeah, you've got another 4 if you want to keep going.
Yeah, that's basically the whole summary of the wine. I don't know if anyone has any questions. So yeah, the idea, sorry, Daniel.
We've got 4 minutes for questions. If anyone wants to put their hand up or fire anything into the Q&A, or Rutger, if you want to talk more about Starkonde, more about what's going on with the farm. I tasted the Cabernet Stellenbosch 2018 yesterday for the first time, which was very exciting. I think even better than the 2017. So definitely looking forward to a 97 at the very least point score from Christian Needs later in the year. It's the minimum I'll be expecting.
So I think from the Starkonde side, we're based in the Jonkershoek Valley in Stellenbosch. It's a really unique area. It's like a hidden gem. Actually, a lot of people don't even know where the water is, even South Africans. So we're basically based in between 2 mountains. The Jonkershoek Valley, just in general, it receives the most rainfall per annum in the Western Cape. Yeah, so and I think that plays a big role on our style of wines. We have really deep clay soils, so most of our rainfall happens in the winter, and then we have drier weather or warmer weather in the summer. And I think with the development of a certain tannin, our wines are really pure, elegant, expressive, with a fine tannin that makes it unique to compare with other Stellenbosch wines. And yeah, we have such beautiful flora and fauna here. We're next to the nature reserve that's actually certified UNESCO World Heritage Site. And that actually had a big influence on us converting to going over to organic farming, I think 2018, and we've never looked back. It's really nice to see farming in a sustainable way. All the flora and fauna coming back to the farm, and it definitely plays a big role on the quality of the wine at the end of the day. So yeah, I see there's a question on the Eau de Nectar there. I think we started, so 2008 was our first production of Eau de Nectar. The vineyard burnt down in 2009, so we couldn't really make a wine sustainably, vintage for vintage. We immediately planted the vineyards over in 2009, and 2014 was our first production of that wine again. So 2015 is a really good vintage, but I must say 2017 for me is probably the best that Starkonde has produced as a vintage in a whole through all our wines. Something that I didn't touch on, Starkonde is also specified or specifically makes specialized Cabernet Sauvignon. So 80% of our wines are focused on Cabernet Sauvignon. We make 3 different Cabernet Sauvignons. And yeah, this is just something interesting.
1 minute warning. 1 minute warning. We've got a question there about the percentages of the blend. If you want to answer that one, and then
yeah. So for the 19, it's about 38% Chenin Blanc, 32% Roussanne, and the rest would probably balance out between Verdelho and Viognier. Obviously, Viognier is a really aromatic grape, and sometimes it can become very dominant in a wine. So we try to balance that out. Also, something specific to this wine is that we pick all the varietals at 5 different sugars. So I go into the vineyard and we pick it 5 times, starting with basically an alcohol level of 12%, and we work it up to 13.5%. So I just try to get a lot of complexity in the wines at different sugar levels, at different ferments in barrel, in cement, eggs, and now in amphora. So yeah, this is a really fun wine for me to work with because I can express myself and experiment every year. Yeah.
Sorry, we've got to bear with me. I'm coming back. Reclaim host. Because I give, go. Right, so I'm just passing over to Chiara now. Rutger was the host there, and I think it delayed a few people getting in, so I'm going to hold on to host. So sorry if anyone missed Rutger's presentation there, but we're moving on to Brookdale, which is wine number 2. So Chiara Scott from Brookdale is going to talk to you about her Chenin Blanc.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. And it's so awesome to be able to be on Zoom with Rutger. It's our first time together, and with Daniel as well. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Brookdale Estate. So we're the new kids on the wine scene block. We are this new estate out in Paarl. We're on the foot of the Rooiberg Mountains. So we've got dramatic sceneries and views for days. I wish I could show you right now, but it's very dark outside. So our property was actually purchased in 2017, and we started the whole replanting program on the estate where we uprooted everything and just left 3 blocks of Chenin. And that's what you're going to taste today. And we've replanted with varieties from the south of France, from Portugal, a 16 variety white field blend, a 20 varietal red field blend. So there's a lot of exciting things that's happening with us out in Paarl at the moment. Yeah, we're planting a lot of things by bush vine, by Eschler. So we're focusing on viticulture and doing things the right way. Rutger is in the more well-known part, for example, of the South African wine industry that's in Stellenbosch. And out in Paarl, we kind of become the little forgotten stepsister. And what we're doing on the estate is for brand Paarl as well, because a lot of the older wines or the great old South African wines come from that region. And it's a fantastic terroir and site. So yeah, about the wine. Our wine is made in a very minimal intervention winemaking style. These vineyards are 36 years old, so they're actually now certified old vines, classified as certified old vines now. And we just make them in a super simple way, whole bunch of press to barrel, spends time in barrel, does what it wants to do, blend, and then bottle. So our first vintage was in 2017, and I think 17 was a great vintage for us. We only had 2 500-liter barrels, and 19 as well. 19 is a fantastic vintage. You get this beautiful purity in this wine, beautiful fresh upfront fruit as well. This is a wine, that you can drink right now and leave for another 8 years in bottle at least. So yeah, that's basically Brookdale.
Thank you, Chiara. So you, as with Rutger, you've been very succinct with your presentation. So we've got 3 minutes. If anyone wants to fire in some questions into the chat box, or you're feeling very brave and want to get on screen, you're more than welcome to put your hand up and do a bit of get your face on the Museum Wines Zoom.
Someone says they lived in Brookdale House.
Yeah. So that's now going to be the house wine for Jeff. I've actually delivered to Jeff's house myself because he lives not too far from Mum, so it's a good excuse to pop down and see Mum deliver some wine at the same time. So personally, David Cole's just commented, I love this wine. It's phenomenal. I describe it as if they planted Chenin in Burgundy and then made it with a Burgundian approach. It does remind me of Domaine Champelou, make a Vouvray called Le Portail. And this reminds me of that very much. It's a similar price as well, but it's exceptional. David Cole actually commented to me after he'd bought some, and I've stolen what he said about it because I thought it was very good. He said it was saline without being salty and full-bodied without being fat. And I think that sums it up really well. It's glorious. So very well done, well made, Chiara. And recently scored 17.5 points out of 20 from Tamlin Cohen, who writes for Jancis Robinson. Tamlin is on the call somewhere. She was one of the people I accidentally let in late because I'd handed over my host privileges to Rutger. But we've got another, look at my schedule, 2 minutes before we hand over to Christian. So if anyone else wants to ask anything about this wine, go for it. Otherwise, we can hand over to Christian 2 minutes early. I'm sure he's prepared. There we go. We've got Jeff's asked his question in the chat box. If you want to jump on that quickly, Chiara.
Come again? What do you think the YouTube will do? Well, on the estate, we've got some beautiful granitic soil and also with clay. So with granite soil, you'll get this beautiful salinity, like Daniel's just mentioned. And then with the clay, you get that fullness and that roundness in your palate. So it's definitely a function of the soil types that we have, or our particular climate that we have at Brookdale, for sure.
Perfect. Well, we're right on time to hand over to Christian. So this was also in the same article, which was published on Jancis Robinson last week. So this is Uwe Mira's top Chardonnay, which we refer to as the Icon Chardonnay. It was scored with 17.5 plus out of 20, which is exciting. 2 pluses after there. So the way I decide for plus, and Tamlin, if I am incorrect, please correct me in the chat box or jump on screen if you want to, maybe after Christian's start presented. But I think it means it's amazing now, but it will get better and possibly even better than better. So that's what I think plus means after a wine score, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Christian, over to you. Let's drink of some of your delicious Chardonnay.
Hi, Daniel and everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity for inviting us for the tasting. So my name is Christian Kutsia. I'm winemaker at Uwe Mira Mountain Vineyards. So Uwe Mira is a small estate situated against the Helberg mountain range in Stellenbosch. We're the very last farm up against this mountain. It's a really beautiful property. If you've not visited, you should definitely come when the traveling restrictions are lifted. I know some of you have been here, and we've got really, really beautiful views over the whole of the Cape Peninsula. So the property is owned by Mr. Toby Fenter, who acquired it mid-2014. And the focus of the property is really to produce world-class wines all over. The estate itself is 127 hectares, of which we've got 33 hectares planted under vine. And we farm with 6 different varieties, which is Sauvignon Blanc, and a very big focus on Chardonnay. And then on the red side, we've got Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Shiraz. So the property has got beautiful altitude. So you enter the estate at about 250 meters above sea level. And then it goes up all the way to about 620 meters above sea level. So all of you might know that for every 100 meters you go above sea level, your annual average temperature drops by about 1 degree Celsius. So in combination with the altitude, we also only 7 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean as the crow flies. And it's this really unique combination of high altitude and proximity to the ocean that then gives us this really cool climate that we farm with. To put it into global perspective, you know, they use the Winkler scale to classify wine growing regions around the world. Category 1 being the coolest and 5 the warmest. We fall in category 2, which is as cool as you can get in South Africa, and it's probably as cool as you can get in a lot of the European countries with global warming these days. I mention always our climate because climate's got a massive effect on the style of wine we can produce. And I think, you know, if you look at the whole range of wines, you'll always find that there's a lot of purity in fruit, it's a lot of freshness, beautiful high acidities, and the wines has got great ageability as well. So the wine that we'll be presenting is the 2017 Uva Mira Icon Chardonnay. 2017 was an exceptional vintage for us. 2015 and 16 was, you know, we had a major drought, and then 17 we broke that drought slightly. We had a slightly warmer winter or spring, and then a really cool season during the ripening season, which gave us really slow ripening periods. We had, you know, sufficient water, and for me, it was probably our best vintage in the last decade is 2017. Our Uva Mira Chardonnay then comes from a registered single vineyard predominantly, and it comes from 0.2 hectares within this vineyard. So this specific vineyard has got 3 different slopes. The one side faces the Atlantic Ocean, that's about 0.2 hectares. Then the middle slope faces slightly more north, and then the other slope a little bit more northeast. And it's from this west-facing slope that faces the Atlantic Ocean that this specific wine is predominantly made from. We hand-pick all our grapes, hand-sort all our grapes, and this Chardonnay then is being fermented in barrel for 9 months, matured in barrel, of which 50% of the barrels were new. We did about 40% of the wine is fermented naturally. And just the style of the wine is really focused to be what Chardonnay is really all about. And that is, you know, Chardonnay in general is actually a very neutral variety, but you get this beautiful mineral character that coming through. It's got very slight zestiness, beautiful nuttiness, and it's really all about the variety opposed to the oak. This is only 1,800 bottles produced, and it's planted on the most beautiful decomposed granite soils. You know, South Africa terms we classify it as Tukulu soils. So it's very deep decomposed granite soils. And yeah, we open for questions if there's any questions.
So you got one there from Jeff, Christian. No new oak interesting since it doesn't dominate in Jeff's opinion, which is I agree with. But I mean it is. How long does it have in oak? Because it's 2017, so it's had some bottle age. So, but I mean, the oak's still there. I think this is still, I would say this is still a very young wine. One you might need to bury in the garden for a couple of more years before you start drinking regularly. What would you say, Christian?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The 2017 wines we find is very tight at the moment. They take quite a while to open up. But you know, if you pay premium price for Chardonnay, you'd like to be able to at least, you know, sell us some of the bottles to experience the wine as they age. And this is exactly you know, what we've aimed with this wine. This wine's got a pH of 3.05, which is extremely low. And I think this wine will only get better with time.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I did a tasting with this not that long ago, but recently enough that it was socially distanced and allowed, of course. But with a Frenchman, no less, who has quite a famous restaurant in the New Forest called Mirabelle, a guy called Claude, who's got the most amazing cellar. It's ridiculous. When I told him we took Morrison on, he was like, "Oh, I've got some 2009 Pinotage," and obviously in a much more French accent. But we tried the single tree. And we tried this, and we tried the single tree, and he said, "Why would I buy Montrachet when we can have this? Is much better for the price." Which, from a Frenchman, I think is a great commendment to your wines that he said, why would I buy Village Montrachet when I can buy this? It's much, much better and it's cheaper. It's still not cheap. It's £59.99 a bottle. So it's proper wine, but you're actually getting Frenchmen and French restaurant owners saying this is better than what they're making out of Montrachet at the moment. And he said, I would put Montrachet, I put the single tree as on the list to people to buy now, and I would put the top wine, the Icon Chardonnay, in the cellar for people to drink in 5 years. So I think it's you're definitely doing the you're definitely, people are recognizing what you're trying to do is, as in this is, yes, the Chardonnay is 4 years since vintage, but it's still a baby and it still needs a bit more time before it's really going to show you why you're paying £80 a bottle for it. So if you've nothing to add, Christian, the good people on the Zoom tasting now have the delights of myself for the next 20 minutes, because not all the winemakers obviously could be here tonight. So I'm going to be presenting your first 3 reds for the evening. Tamlin has confirmed, plus which means that wine will age and the score will go up. So yes, my estimation was correct. So 17.5 points now. But in the future could well be 18.5, 19 points, maybe a 20 out of 20, this wine you're drinking now. So and Decanter included it in their top 50 white wines of 2020, which, considering how many wines they must taste at Decanter in a year, is pretty impressive. So a good investment, I would say, to anyone who's got 80 quid spare for a bottle of Chardonnay. So first, red wine is we haven't made a mistake. If you're looking at your glass of red wine and going, that's not Grenache, it is Grenache. So you can probably see on my camera as well. I mean, it's very light for Grenache. Grenache, typically you're thinking, David's told me not to give up the day job. I'm not sure what he thinks about my presentation skills. But so Grenache, typically you're thinking Châteauneuf-du-Pape or Priorat, hot climates, big, brooding, sometimes impenetrable expressions of the cultivar. This does not look like it's impenetrable whatsoever, but that's why I like it. And that's why, the French accent, David, thank you for clarifying. Sorry. I won't become a French impersonator anytime soon. That's why I really like this wine. So this is made by Jacques Wenzel at Black Elephant Vintners in Franschhoek. So we've been importing their wine for just over a year. We took them on. They were available previously in the UK through another merchant. But for whatever reason, they decided they wanted to change and came over to us just at the beginning of the lockdown pandemic. The bulk of what we were buying from them was the entry level sort of 2 Dog Sauvignon Blanc. They do a Pinotage Rosé and a Bordeaux blend, which we had planned to sell in abundance to our pub and restaurant customers at about sort of, to go on their wine list, about 25, 28 pounds, something like that. And then all of a sudden, no more wholesale customers. So we had to change tack and introduce the wine slightly differently to our retail customers. But what the wine that really struck me for being quite exciting was this Grenache, because it is a lighter, more delicate style of Grenache. So it's actually, you'd be amazed, you probably won't believe me, this has had 24 months in French oak, but I can't detect it on the nose too much. It's a 2015 vintage, so it was in oak for 24 months, so it was bottled 2017 probably, so it's been in the bottle for 4 years. The oak's integrated, but if we have a little taste, don't need to ask me twice. There's, despite the fact it's quite light, it's got a really good structure to it. Is it organic? So it's from the Bakenshoek vineyard, David. So I don't know if it is organic. They might follow organic practices. It's certainly not certified organic as far as I know, and they don't put it on the label. But it may, I know they they do follow certain organic practices. Black Elephant, they buy most of their fruit in. The only grapes they grow themselves is a Cabernet Sauvignon, which if you ever go there in Franschhoek, is the vineyards surrounding the house is all Cabernet Sauvignon. Used to be called Petit Vin, I believe, before it was called Black Elephant Vintners. So they do buy different things from different people. So they can't always, if that vineyard's not certified organic, obviously they can't call it organic. Sometimes with some of their blends, it's from 3 different vineyards all over the place. So one of them might be, but the other 2 might not. So obviously you can't say it is. But it's so in the Bakkenshoek vineyard, the soil is sandstone, Table Mountain sandstone, which produces smaller, more concentrated berries. So you get all of the sugars and everything that's inside that grape are concentrated into less juice, as I understand it. And so they also employ 30% of the grapes are whole bunch fermented. So that's where you're getting the freshness from, and they don't crush the other grapes. The 70%, which aren't whole bunch fermented, are not crushed. So that's where you're getting this almost sort of Beaujolais-esque freshness and vivacity to the wine, as I would describe it. I think it's very nice. This is why I said to Shaka, I'm quite excited to show this wine to people, and especially to some of the entree, to some of the sommeliers we work with, some of the really sort of wine artisan, boutique wine focused wine shops, because that's a really cool wine that, so 30 quid, it's not outrageous. It's affordable, whether that's affordable for every day or affordable for the weekend or once a month as a treat. Most people who are into wine and have a wine budget could afford to buy that. And that's what sort of excited me. Steve Stanbridge, I had a hairy Grenache recently, which reminds me of this. I really like it. Well, this is good news. I don't know what hairy Grenache is. Is that a brand or is that a type of cultivar? Stephen Stanbridge, if you could enlighten me, I'd be greatly appreciative. Anywho, moving on, because I'm just about to give myself the time out kick, because we have done my 7 minutes, possibly because I overran on Christian slightly. Yes, Jeff, brilliant comment. I thought the same thing. Jeff said it's reminiscent of Native Filet single vineyard Cinsault, which was actually what I thought the first time I tried it. It's got that same vivacity, the same life to it. Je ne sais quoi. I don't know what the Afrikaans is for je ne sais quoi, Christian. Do you know? Can you tell me what that is? No? There's no Afrikaans for je ne sais quoi. Okay, we'll have to work on that. And Tamerlane, great food wine. Absolutely. Duck, I think this would be fab with. Barely cooked, still quacking duck, I think. Moving on, right, where we go? Next, red wine. Red wine, I was thinking about changing the order, but I won't. Let's just stick with what I decided previously. So now, wine number 5. So my other glass has still got Christian Chardonnay, which I'm going to come back to later. So if your pouch has been lying down for a while, just don't open it straight away. And that's, so I'm having a bit of a technical malfunction. So 2007, we're going back in time a little bit. You don't often get a wine from South Africa, which is a 2007 vintage, 14 years after the grapes were harvested. But you do tonight. So this is Haut Espoir, again in Franschhoek. These are all estate grown Cabernet grapes. And this is not actually the latest vintage we've had of this wine. We actually had the 2008 first, when we've been working with them for a few years now. We had the 2008 first, and Rob Armstrong, who's owner and was winemaker at the time when this was made. He's since given up winemaking duties. But he did make this wine. They did the 2008 first, which I really like that sort of ethos, because similar to Musa, who have done that in the past, releasing vintages in random orders, because they try it in the cellar and they go, that's not ready yet. Don't let anyone drink that. What else have we got? Let's try the next one. That's better. Let's release that one now. People will like that. And then when that's gone, they'll try it again. Yes, it's ready now. We'll release that. So we started with the 2008. I mean, that was 2017, 18. So again, for a current vintage wine, it's loads of bottle age on it. I'm quite excited to try this because I haven't tried it in a while. They only made 4,268 bottles. I know in the last year we've ordered 1,200 of those, and more before that. So we've had a good crack at selling most of the wine, the production of this vintage. People really like it. It's £39.99. It's not it was in oak for 33 months in French oak Tamlin. £39.99. So it's not cheap. But it's been in oak for 33 months. Oak barrels are expensive. They're also, you've got them in the wine's in there for almost 3 years, not selling. So there is a value and cost indicative of that. So you have to charge people money if they want to drink it. So, but I think it's good value, to be honest. If you wanted a Bordeaux of this quality, it wouldn't be £39.99. It would be more. How much more? I don't know. I think it would be lots more. 60 quid, 65 quid, maybe more, 70, 75. So this is modestly priced. It's not cheap. It's modestly priced and excellent value. This is getting huge love on the chat box. So this one has actually previously scored it was a little time ago, but Tamlin tried this before and gave it 18 out of 20, which is an enormous score to have for a £40 South African wine on Jancis Robinson's website. That's a sort of score that Jancis Robinson would give a first growth. So for a £40 South African Cabernet, and it is 100% Cabernet. Yes, John, it was a bit hostile, and that was the thing when we were selling the 2008. We did Dorset Wine Festival, which was the biggest problem we had. It was when we had that ridiculous 32, 33 degree summer, those few days when the World Cup was on, or the Euro, whatever it is. I don't really do football, but all the South Africans were putting their jumpers on because it was 33 degrees and they were getting a bit of a chill. But the biggest problem we had at that festival was just seeing Giles's comment, was trying to keep the red wine cool. People were putting their red wines into ice buckets, because if you were pouring them out and it was hot, it was like a hot tap. Giles Hannam, I really like it. Why doesn't Tim Atkin? You'd have to ask Tim. Giles, I'm not going to foray into that viper's nest this moment in time. Great value, Steve Stanbridge. I think this is overwhelmingly consumers like it, even if Tim Atkin doesn't. He might like it. I don't know. I don't know. He hasn't told me he dislikes it. I think we need to move on. I think I'm waffling. So very nice 2007 Cabernet. I think you should ask Gerard the same question later, Giles. You'll get a much more forthright answer than I'm prepared to give at this moment in time. What I will say is that I did read a Tim Atkin review of one of Gerard's wines once, which it was a bit sort of a backhanded, reluctant 90 score review, which said, if we accept that there is a demand for this style of wine, then we must also accept that this wine meets that demand. Which I thought did seem somewhat begrudging in its generosity towards that score, which I think was for the Syrah, maybe. All right. moving swiftly on, because I don't want to encroach on the finale. So we're going on to MKM, which is Morrison's top pinotage, a very unpinotage, some might say. So this is so Morrison are in Franschhoek, but the grapes for this wine are not. They're from Stellenbosch. They're actually from the oldest pinotage rootstock in Stellenbosch. It used to be exclusively, the grapes were exclusive to Canon Cop, who make famous for making pinotage. I don't know if they went into the black label pinotage, which basically, if you were to say to me, I want to spend £150 on a bottle of pinotage, I could say Canon Cop can help you with that. This isn't £150. This is £39.99, but it is from that same vineyard. And Morrison now have exclusivity of the fruit in that vineyard. This is the last vintage that's been made for now. There is no 2017, 18 or 19. There might be a 2020. I believe the vineyard has actually been grubbed up now because it was virus, but cuttings have been taken and are going to be planted in Franschhoek. So MKM may be back in 2020 from that vineyard, then in the future from its new home in Franschhoek. Interesting because like the Grenache we just tried, this also has 30% whole bunch fermentation. It also has quite a long time in oak, 65% new oak for 15 months. And again, new oak, what I didn't mention about the Grenache, which I will go back to very briefly, is that it's 5 to 8 year old 500-litre French barrels. So, and there are some relevant points in that, in that it's 5 to 8 year old oak, so it is imparting much less in terms of a flavor influence on the wine. Oak gives wine flavor characteristics in its first use. Second, third, after that, it has much less impact on what you're going to taste, but it will still give you a mouthfeel, texture, more of a robust wine. Old oak will. Also, 500 litres is relevant because that's much larger than your traditional wine barrel. Traditional wine barrel is probably 300 to 330 litres. 500-litre barrel is more like a brandy barrel, and in using that, you've got less wine to oak contact, ergo even less impact of the oak on the wine. So this is 65% new oak. That's quite a lot of new oak on the pinotage. Spends 2 years in bottle until it's released, until anyone is allowed to try it, because that's Clayton's ethos. He doesn't want anyone to try it until he feels it is good enough and ready to drink. And he does that not only with this, but with the Mercator Chardonnay, which is about £23.99. So that has a year in oak, then a year in the cellar. And Nikki's screaming at him saying, Clayton, we have to sell some of this wine. We've got bills to pay. And he says, no, it's not ready. I don't want anyone to try it yet. Suzanne, the Widowmaker is not the same site. So the Widowmaker is again Stellenbosch grapes, but from the Stellenbosch University vineyard. So, and this is fermented in, so he uses new oak and 800 litres amphora, so big clay pots. So again, that's imparting texture rather than flavor. And I think it's a lighter style of pinotage, and it's only 13.5%, which is low for pinotage. I mean, you can get lower, but I mean, Widowmaker, which Suzanne just mentioned, that's 15. And I think that's a generous 15. I think it's probably 15.5. It may even be getting up towards 16, but if it gets to 16, we have to pay more tax. So let's put 15 on the label. Shh. It's quite elegant, and I think it does demonstrate the parent grapes, which of course are Pinot Noir and Cinsault, both of which are quite delicate varietals. So when you get these enormous, monstrous Pinotage, it's sort of like, why are you trying to make it in that style? Because the two grapes that were used to create it are nothing like that at all. You don't get Pinot Noir at 16% and aged in new oak for 9,000 months. So why are you doing that to the Pinotage? Why don't we treat it a bit more accordingly to how we might treat its parents from southern France or Burgundy? And then you get something a bit more like this, which I think is quite exciting, and it's the Pinotage that converted me to Pinotage being brilliant. Because before I wasn't convinced. It smelled like tires that have been on fire for a certain period of time, and then we're not on fire anymore. But this doesn't smell like that. It's delicious, and it's got sort of garlic herb elements, and I really like it. There we go. My time's up. So thank you for sticking with me through all of that. If there are questions, I will rattle through them. I'm going to hand back to Christian, who is going to introduce us to OTV.
All right. So next up then is our 27 OTV. So OTV stands for Ockertobias Venter, which is the initials of the owner's father. It's also the owner's own initials, but the wine really commemorates his father's contribution to his life. It's an interesting blend because it's Cabernet Franc dominated. It's 58% Cabernet Franc and 42% Cabernet Sauvignon. And the Cabernet Sauvignon vineyards are planted roughly around 300 meters above sea level. And they're also planted on beautifully oak leaf and Tukulu soils, which is both decomposed granite soils. And then the Cabernet Franc vineyard, in 2017, we only had one vineyard, Cabernet Franc, in production. And it's planted on a little hill. And once again, you know, the one side we harvested in different portions. And the side that faces the ocean normally goes into our single varietal Cabernet Franc, where the slightly warmer side facing northwest then goes into this OTV. And it just gives that beautiful richness. What I can tell you guys is that, you know, the biggest sort of influence the cool climate has on our red wines is, for me, is the type of tannin structure that you get. It really gives it a silky tannin structure opposed to, you know, other wines that's got big tannin structures are really grippy. The tannin structures in our wines are really elegant, yet it's got beautiful sort of punch, if I can call it that. So the wine has been matured in French oak barrels for 18 months, of which 65% of the barrels were new barrels. We do malolactic fermentation in barrel. All the grapes are also hand-picked and then hand-sorted. So Cabernet Franc is quite a difficult variety to work with, both Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon in South Africa. We sometimes struggle to get it phenolically ripe, and that's why I do believe that cooler climates, you know, suit Cabernet Franc really well, because then you've got a very slow ripening period, and you can get that variety phenolically ripe. And when you do, you've got, you know, beautiful wine. Cabernet Franc obviously, you know, adds a lot of perfume and sort of feminine characters to the wine, with the Cabernet Sauvignon just then the backbone structure of this wine. So yeah, you are welcome to ask any questions. Daniel, please tell me if I have to add anything.
Must you add anything? Well, you got some questions already, Christian. So you got Ian Shaw's. He's got some 2016 DW Syrah, a very astute purchase. Ian, when should he start drinking it? If I put my 2 pence in, I think it's sublime now, and it is almost irresistible now. It is one of those wines you do have to give to a friend to look after for you. Just as long as they don't drink wine, as long as they drink Smirnoff Ice or something, because it's irresistible. It's delicious now, but it is only going to get better. But I'll let you field the rest of that answer.
Yeah, no, 2016. Yeah, it's a vintage that you know, a lot of the critics didn't regard it as a very good vintage. And like 2014, it just took some time to open up. I mean, the 2014s now, some of the, great wines we've made in South Africa, and it just took a while to open up. And I think 2016 also, needs time. So it's difficult to say, because it's quite a personal experience wine, and everybody likes to drink it at a different sort of frame in its life. But I would recommend, drinking that wine in the next 2 years. Yeah.
So do you mean in the next 2 years, as in drink it between now and 2023, or from 2023 onwards?
From 23 onwards. Yeah.
So right, we're just about to. We got some time. We're doing very well, I think, especially considering I just did the last 3 wines. Great structure, Giles Hannum says. When will it be at its best? And Jeff loves the Cab Franc influence, which is just sublime. I'm going to throw my 2 cents in because I'm only just pouring mine. I'm late to the game. I was too busy educating all of you about pinotage to actually drink my pinotage. So I've been developing a methodology in terms of when a wine will be at its best. So when you open a wine of this quality, and what Blind Faith do very well is when Robbie opens the wine before they dispense it, he assesses, actually, would you want to drink this straight away, or shall we leave it open for a bit before we put it in the pouch and add the argon? Because once you put it in and add the argon, it's not going to change. So if you decant it and leave it for a bit, then do that. Then when the wine arrives with you guys at home and you're trying it with me now, it's at the point where you should be drinking it. So the OTV, I find, is incredibly approachable already. When you pour it straight from the bottle into the glass, it's pretty much ready to go. But I've been drinking sort of half a bottle. I don't do this every day. I don't drink OTV every day, but you drink half the bottle, then leave the rest. Come back to it 48 hours later, 72 hours later, 96 hours later. The longer it stays good, and most importantly, the longer it keeps getting better, that suggests to me you need to leave it longer before you actually really dig in and get involved with that wine. So the OTV, I think, personally, is going to be starting to drink at its best 2017, around 2025. And I reckon it will hold for 15 to 20 years at that sort of peak. Obviously, it will change, but I think that's the 2025 to 2040, 45 would be my estimation of this wine. And if you do want to drink it and buy it, then I suggest you buy some now, because we don't get a lot of it. We get sort of 36 or 48, or if I can put a couple more martinis into Christian. Where was that place we went last? Somewhere very strange. Jones Family Kitchen was, I think, I was our last dinner out in London. Get a bit more wine into Christian, I could eke out another 12 maybe. But buy it now, because it's 120 quid a bottle now. It's not getting any cheaper. It will only get more expensive. So if you like it, you want some, buy it now, because I think the quality progression, which is getting better every vintage, I think this is easily going to be a 250 pound wine by 2025, when it's going to be starting to drink. So you'll be saving yourself lots of money by buying some now. Christian, you dive in. We're just about to hand over to Gerard.
Yeah, no, you spot on there, Daniel. This wine, I would, if you have the opportunity to buy a couple of bottles and sell us some of it, I would definitely keep some and open it only in 2025. This wine will it will just get that beautiful bottle maturation, and it gives it a bit of roundness on the palate. At the moment, it's very tight. It does open up even in the glass. It becomes beautifully perfumed on the nose as it opens up. But yeah, it will definitely age beautifully. I also see there's just questions in terms of 2015 and 16. So 2015, was also amazing vintage. It was a little bit riper and more concentrated than 17. 17 for me has got more elegance than 15, where 15 was quite a concentrated and in-your-face wine, which was also obviously quite a dry season. And then 16 was a very difficult vintage. We struggled a lot with Horizon. And I remember very clearly that we sorted out, in the vineyard, we obviously do green harvesting, but in the cellar, on the sorting line, we sorted out up to 25% of the grapes because we struggled quite a lot with Horizon. So also great vintage and doesn't have the intensity of 15 and 17, but a beautiful, elegant wine. Probably doesn't have the ageability of 15 and 17. So those wines I'll probably drink in the next 5 to 10 years. But 15 and 17 are exceptional vintages.
Cool. Thank you, Christian. So, Gerard Holden, you're on the call. Where are you, Gerard? There you are. Right, Gerard Holden is going to present to you our finale of the evening. So Gerard is the co-owner of Holden Mans in Franschhoek, the third Franschhoek winery with us this evening. Elysium is our most expensive, but it could also be our best value South African wine that we import. Only 800 bottles, I think, produced in the first vintage, which is the 2015. And I'm particularly excited because I've not tried this vintage yet. I mean, normally I would expect Gerard to have sent me a case of 12 just for free because I like it. And that's what I expect, Gerard. But he hasn't. So there we go. I'm going to have a 68 ml pouch instead of my case of 12. But there we go. I'll make do. More for everyone else because there's so little of it. And what I like to say about wines that there is such a shortage of is take something like Gerard's 800 bottles of Elysium. Compare that to the 8 million bottles of Dom Perignon, which are produced every year. Dom Perignon, allegedly. Some of you will have heard this rhetoric from me before, but you'll hear it again. Allegedly rare, exclusive, difficult to get hold of. That's not true. The only people that fight over the sale of Dom Perignon is the people trying to sell it for as little as possible because they've got an abundance of other people who have bought it thinking it was an investment who also can't get rid of it. But let's put it into perspective. So 8 million divided by 800, I think fag packet maths is about 12.5 to 13,000. So for every 12.5 to 13,000 bottles of Dom Perignon pumped out of the Moet and Chandon factory, there is one singular bottle of Elysium, and it's the same price. How does that make sense? So if you actually want a rare, elusive bottle of wine for yourself or to give to a friend, buy Elysium, not Dom Perignon. Gerard, over to you. Oh, hang on, let me unmute you. Ask to unmute. Unmute. There
okay,
you go.
Can you hear
You're
me?
unmuted. Fire at will.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be joining you from Johannesburg. It's a beautiful, cool evening here. The stars are out and lights are twinkling and the sound of gunshots in the background. It's a perfect location to be presenting our top wine. So Elysium, why did we make this wine? Well, our cellar master is a guy called Thierry Haberer, who, as you probably tell from that name, is French. Thierry was actually born in Corsica, which the Corsicans don't class themselves as being French, but the French do. And then he went to Bordeaux to study wine. And when he finished studying wine, he met a guy called Michel Rolland, who hired him and thought he was kind of worth putting into his winemaking team. So he worked with Michel for quite a few years before he came across to South Africa again in a consulting role with Michel. And back in 2005, Thierry was involved in a project between Michel Rolland and Michel Chapoutier, where they made a barrel of Merlot and a barrel of Syrah, and they blended them together. And this came out as something particularly impressive. It was called M Squared, and it was sold off at auctions in the later part of the first decade of this century. And so when he came to Holder Manse in 2014, he was very clear with me that he wanted to see what happened with our Merlot and Syrah. They're planted right next to each other. And we found that quite often they get to an optimal ripeness around about the same time. And so we figured out that Thierry could actually achieve what had been his dream for a few years, which was to co-ferment in the same barrel, Merlot and Syrah. So what we did was we picked what we thought was our best zones. And when they were both ripe, we picked them on the same day and layered them into 225 litre barrels. And we co-fermented them naturally. So there's no added commercial yeast in this wine. It's completely natural fermentation. And we roll the barrels up and down the floor of the cellar until fermentation starts, and then happens regularly. They get rolled every 5 or 6 hours during fermentation. And then after fermentation, we have about a 60-day post-fermentation maceration period where we keep the berries and the wine all together, and then we press it and taste all that beautiful juice. And we separate out the heart of the press and the free run and the overnight fraction of the press, and bring it all together. And we kind of create a blend of those three portions, and that's what becomes Elysium. This was 22 months in 3 oak barrels, brand new oak barrels. And it's created what we call Elysium. The reason why we chose the word Elysium was it sort of reminded me of the Elysian fields, of going to a better place, of a wine taking you to a superb place of bliss and pleasure. And that's what gave the name to this wine. And I hope you guys all enjoy it. I did a tasting of Elysium to a number of people last night in Johannesburg, and sold 36 bottles to the 6 attendees who came, and they were all raving about it. So it showed very well at altitude last night at 5,500 feet. I hope it shows well to you guys in the UK tonight.
Yeah, I like it very much. I think we made the right decision, Gerard. Gerard, as I have to pronounce your name because Gerard's phone has taken to putting in an accent over the E in his name. So but from now on, Gerard, rather than Gerard. It's delicious. Well, I wasn't expecting anything less than delicious, but we did make the right decision because we were deliberating whether we should show the 2015, which is the maiden vintage, even though we don't actually have very much left of it, or the new one. And I think the new one makes sense because it means I get to try it, which is important, because if I know what it tastes like, I can sell some. But also what was going through my mind is, having had the 16 Merlot and the 16 Syrah recently, they're much more approachable, I think, than the 15 equivalents. And I do find this the same. I mean, that's just been opened. It's had a little bit of air, just being open without being decanted, dispensed into the pouch, and it's delicious. I would happily drink more than I've got.
We'll have to enjoy a bottle of it next time you come to Friendship, Daniel.
Next time I'm allowed in, or allowed back, is probably the more pertinent matter.
No, you can come to Friendship. You can come to South Africa, no problem today.
I've got to stay at
when you go back to the
Slough when I get back, and I don't want to do that.
It's just the way the UK treat you when you get home.
Right, so we got some responses, some feedback from the people of Zoom. So it's a life changer for Suzanne Barnes. You've changed Suzanne's life, which I think is, I mean, that's the least you'd want to do. Dom, oh my God, wonderful wine. Dom I've known for a long time. And this is definitely a Dom wine. Robust, lots of depth. Depth is the thing that Dominic's looking for in a wine, and this has it in abundance. Insanely long finish again from Dom. It just, yeah, you don't need much more than 68 mil, because that's enough to smell, and it smells amazing. And once you've tasted it, it does stay on the palate for an incredibly long time. John Dimbleby, more bite to it than the 15. Great achievement. There we go. John Dimbleby was a enthusiastic supporter of the maiden vintage. David Cole, Elysium reflects the rich nature of this beauty. Giles Hannum, who I believe you've met at Holden Man's, gorgeous. Unusual to see a blend of Merlot and Syrah from South Africa. Why don't you jump in on that point, Gerard? So we're over our hour, but we can carry on for a bit longer. We're not going to get kicked off because we splashed on a per account. So there we go.
There you go. Like, I mean, Merlot Syrah, you don't necessarily see that as a blend particularly often, but I guess that adds to the speciality around this wine. And we grow the two varietals next to each other. They're on similar soil. They're on the more fertile part of the soil. And we figured out, we actually did a test in 2014 where we just blended some Merlot and Syrah together, because it was something that Thierry really wanted to do, to try and emulate what he'd done for Michel. And it worked. It worked since 2014. So we drank those ourselves. I never released those to anybody. And so when we co-fermented it, it just brought a real sort of complexity to the wine, and it binds the molecules at a very early age. The fermentation was pretty cool. It took about 21 days. So obviously with wild yeast, it's always a little bit of a lottery what happens, but we were blessed with a pretty cool fermentation. The 2016, obviously, cooler vintage than 2015, a lot more approachable today than the 2015s are. Even now, the 2016s are still more approachable than 15s. And yeah, it's a real pleasure making this wine, and it's a pleasure drinking it as well.
It's an absolute pleasure drinking. I'm going to delve into the co-fermentation a little bit more, but just because how I describe it to customers. We've got a few, most of the participants are still here, so we've got them hooked. Gerard, we may as well tell them a bit more. So I describe it as, Giles, and when should we drink the 2015? I would say, Giles, similar to the OTV 2025 onwards. So the beauty of South Africa is that you can do what you want. There aren't the rules and regulations of Bordeaux, of Burgundy. So Gerard's got this amazing plot of Merlot. That's like a kick-ass Pomerol vineyard. He's got an amazing block of Syrah next door to it on the same terroir. Merlot and Syrah they're not normally stable mates. That's why Syrah in France is in the Rhone and Merlot is in Saint-Emilion on the right bank of Bordeaux, in Pomerol, in Fronsac. There's reasons for this, but Gerard's got this unique terroir where they're side by side and they're mates. They're very happy, and not only will they grow next to each other, but they'll ripen at the same time, except in 2017 when they didn't. So there will be no 2017 Elysium. And this is the sort of ethos of these sorts of winemakers and winery owners like Gerard, like Thierry. They didn't ripen. They could cobble it together and just fudge it, but they're not going to, because they believe in the products that they are selling and that they are offering you the opportunity to taste. So it's like having the best Pomerol site next to the best Côte Rôtie site. In France, you would never be allowed to, well, you could blend the two together, but you'd bankrupt yourself, because what would cost you an enormous amount of money in fruit, you would then be able to sell as Vin Rouge, red wine from France, for about €2. So being able to do that in South Africa, make a very small amount, ferment them together, and co-fermentation is very difficult because if you're doing a normal blend, you make Merlot and you make Syrah, and then you've got a Merlot and a Syrah, and you put them together and you go, oh, it needs more Merlot. Let's put more Merlot in. That is very easy to fix. If all the grapes are in the same barrel are fermented together, that's what it is at the end of the process. You can't change it. It's done. That's what you've got. So it takes an amazing skill. SA Super Tuscan, says Jeff Kogel. You could. Is it a super South African? What do you think, Gerard? Is this a super South African, or is this its own unique unicorn wine?
Yeah, no, I think it's very much a unicorn in terms of the wine. We weren't trying to sort of be a me too to anything else that's out there. It was a project that's very close to Thierry's heart, and so we said we'll go for it and see what we can do.
Maybe if you put Pinotage in there, it would be a super South African.
Then you can shoot me.
Tamlin has just emailed me. Sorry, I got distracted. Gerard, when are you going to start making sparkling Pinotage? Come on, that's what the people want.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Would a petition?
Neither a sparkling nor a Pinotage.
Thank you, Rutger. The winemakers, you are free to go because it's getting late over there. I know you need your beauty sleep. So you are free to go. Anyone who's still on there, we've still got quite a few people on there. So if we want to indulge in a bit of wine debate, we've got about 40 minutes before we need to swap over to Google Meets for blind faith reveal of what we were all trying to figure out last night. Gerard, I know let's see if there's anything else outstanding. How long would you decant it for? John Dimbleby says.
So, yeah, I mean, for the 2016, probably 3 or 4 hours before you wanted to open it.
Open it in the morning before you go to work.
Yeah.
Evening.
Drink it when you come out at lunchtime.
I mean, for however long it's open for, it's not going to do it any harm. So if you
no, God no.
Before you go to work, if you open at 8:30 in the morning, by the time you get back, it will only be better for that length of time. Or if you decant it before you go to work, or if you decant it before you go to bed the night before.
Just hope the dog doesn't get a chance to drink it.
But have you got a decanter the dog can get into, Gerard?
Got clever dogs.
Got a clever dog. Push it off the counter.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Tamlin's asking a Mr. Stark Conde background. Can you tell me about it? Good. Do you want to dive back in?
Yeah, sorry, Tamlin. So yeah, Stark Conde, basically we're based in Stellenbosch, in the Jonkershoek Valley. I think we're probably one of 2 cellars here in the Jonkershoek Valley, which makes it really special. I think the award was basically given to us after applying, since we like only 2 cellars here in Stellenbosch. So the wine here is from a 2-hectare block planted on 11 different soil types. And it's also like the typical Madeira and field blends of Portugal. It's planted to 4 different varietals, Chenin Blanc, Roussan, Viognier, and Verdelho. And yeah, like Daniel said, everything was basically picked together, crushed and pressed together, and it was co-fermented, 90% in oak barrels, 3% new oak, and then 10% was in cement eggs. Yeah, after fermentation, it was basically matured for about 8 months in barrel. And yeah, I think everyone basically names it, but very minimal intervention. We only have a minimal bentonite fining to just clean out the wines and make it more approachable on the eye. And yeah, at Dublin, we basically converted into certified organic farming. I think next year would be our first fully organic harvest. So looking forward for that. And that's basically the story. Is there anything else, Daniel, I should add?
No, I think you've covered it. Good job. Thanks for sticking with us for the rest of the tasting. Yeah, everyone's still on there. Chiara's still on. Christian's still on. So if anyone has any more questions for Rutger, Stark Conde, Chiara, Brookdale, or Christian at Uvamira, they're there. They are waiting for your questions. But if everyone's done, no more questions, we can get back to our evenings. There's still sunshine outside in England, which is tremendously exciting. I was hoping to do the tasting outside, but the Wi-Fi wouldn't reach that far. Just lots of love for all the wines, which is really heartening to see. Well, I mean, it should be. I mean, if 550 quid's worth of wine, I mean, if you didn't like it, I'd be a bit worried about you. Off-piste, do any of the SA winemakers consider Italian grape Sangiovese? They'd be very brave if they did. I'm happy for any of them on there to dive in, but Sangiovese is very difficult to grow anywhere outside of Tuscany. But if there's anywhere outside of Tuscany in Italy, I can't remember who it was a very famous producer of Brunello di Montalcino who thought he'd found the perfect site for Sangiovese in Napa. And after 15 years, he just went, it won't work. It won't work. And they pulled it all up and put Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in, because Sangiovese is probably the most temperamental grape on the planet. So if you want to plant it in SA, crack on. But any of the winemakers or Gerard still on there, have you ever considered planting Sangiovese? Jeff's asked Nebbiolo. I don't know of any Nebbiolo in South Africa. It might have a better chance than Sangiovese. It might be a bit too warm, I would have thought, for Nebbiolo. But Rutger's nodding. Dive in, Rutger.
No, I think there's a bit of Nebbiolo or Sangiovese in the Yamla and Arda Valley. I think Bouchard Finlayson works with it in a wine called Hannibal or something. But yeah, from my side, I think I have too much wines on my portfolio to add anything more. So that's a definite no, guys.
I once asked Christian if he could plant another cultivar, what would it be? He said, more Chardonnay. Not that was the question. It was something else, more other than Chardonnay. Christian, would you plant Nebbiolo? Would you plant Sangiovese? Or if you could plant another cultivar, something different, not Chardonnay, not Cabernet, and not Cab Franc, what would you go for?
I think the side Daniel really lends itself to probably Pinot Noir, and I've had that question many times. Why don't we plant Pinot Noir? Yeah, so if I had to plant something else, it would probably be Pinot Noir up against the mountain. But yeah, I think you've also got to be careful to be jack of all trades, master of none. You've got to have a slight focus, and so we won't be planting Pinot Noir, unfortunately.
Perfect. Well, Chiara, you planted lots of Portuguese varietals. Any Sangiovese in the offing?
Nope. No, out of all those 20 varieties that we're about to plant, there's no Sangiovese, no Nebbiolo. We've got Riga Franca, we've got Sauza, we've got, Tempranillo, but no Sangiovese, no Nebbiolo.
No. So I think the answer,
Nothing
if you
like
like Sangiovese, Chianti, Brunello di Montepulciano, Brunello di Montalcino, these are the wines that are available to you. There we go. Right, I think let's start wrapping it up. We've still I think we're done. Thank you. Jeff's confirmed it. Jeff's done. Jeff's off. Anyone else? The time is now. You've got 30 seconds.
Dan, awesome job. Thank you very much.
Barnes, can my missus see your dog that appeared earlier, please?
That's just the sort of question you expect every time, isn't it?
Here she is. This is Theo. She is the wine hound. So she was a lockdown pup, so we got her the end of March last year, and we were in the garden with our stemless glasses, and because she was so small, her head went straight into the stemless glass, and she had a good old guzzle at about 9 weeks old. So she's been being trained from a young age the appreciation of all things Venus. So there we go. We've dealt with the dog. John Dimble, the finest member of the Grigg household there. Well, quite agree with you, John, until the next editions arrive in July, which are not dogs, they're actually small people. Plural.
Congratulations, Daniel.
Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, congratulations.
I've never, so this is how COVID has messed with our world. I haven't seen Christian for about 18 months. We used to see each other at least once a year, when he would come over or I would go there. I've never even met Kiara. This is the closest we've come to a meeting, which I've taken on their wine at the end of last year, selling it, championing it. Never met the winemaker, which is completely alien to me, because normally we meet first and you try the wines there, but now they come by FedEx, which is very impersonal because FedEx are useless, globally incompetent. I think would probably be an accurate summation of FedEx. So I'm very excited to get back out to South Africa when I can and meet Kiara. Met Tim, spoke to Tim on the phone earlier. Kiara, he's coming over next week.
Nice.
It's just because I think Ollie's driving him insane. But I think if there is no
get out of it.
We'll call it now. And I will see some of you, if not all, on Google Meets in about half an hour.
Daniel.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon. Take care. Thanks to all the winemakers. Thanks to everyone that joined in. Bye-bye.
Yeah.